Hi friends, welcome to Morning Elms. In this video, we're going to talk about some of my favorite punk rock-ish albums in my collection. Hey everyone, Kyle here. I got a lot of new subscribers lately, so thank you everyone for following and welcome if you're a new subscriber. So today we're going to run down some of my favorite punk rock albums in my collection, and I put an ish in the title of this because punk rock means a lot of different things to different people. So I just want to throw out some ground rules here. Punk rock to me is more of an attitude and an ethos. So when I am listing off these albums, they may not necessarily be that traditional, 3-chord 70 punk rock sound, but all these albums are at least rooted in punk rock. So I just want to get that caveat out of the way first. So I'm going to start off this list with something really big, and then we'll get into a bit more obscure albums as the list goes on, but I just wanted to get this out of the way. This is The Clash, London Calling. And I don't mean to dismiss this at all. This is one of my favorite albums of all time. I just don't think personally I could say any more than what's already been said about this. So The Clash, up until this point, had made pretty straightforward punk rock, great albums like Give 'Em Enough Rope, and of course the Clash self-titled album. They've always been influenced by different genres, but on this album they really seem to wear it on their sleeves. And here the production is cleaned up a bit, and the result is an album that has a wide variety of influences, including ska, reggae, pop, rockabilly, and at the end of the day, it all has more of a pop sensibility than their previous records. Now, this was released in 1979. There's just amazing songs on this. Of course, the title track, London Calling, but we got Jimmy Jazz, Hateful, Rudy Can't Fail, Lost in the Supermarket, Train in Vain, Lovers Rock. And the songs on this album cover a lot of different topics, including racial tension, poverty, class issues, safe sex and pregnancy, drugs, being an adult and adult responsibility and having to deal with that and navigate that with your personality that might be a little more carefree. There's just a lot of themes explored on this. And of course you have, Joe Strummer's classic punk rock delivery, and then you have songs with Mick Jones on it as well. And the contrast is great when they trade off vocal duties. Just amazing musicianship. And we have more brass instrumentation throughout this. And the result is just a fuller, more realized sound for The Clash with tremendous songwriting, and just every song on this is fantastic. And it's one of the best punk rock albums of all time for a reason. But yeah, The Clash, London Calling, not much more needs to be said about this one. If you haven't heard it, check it out. One of the all-time greats, and could be a fantastic introduction to punk rock music in general. So check this one out. Then we have Fugazi, 13 songs. Now this is a compilation album, and it was released in 1989. And of course, it starts with that just infectious, unforgettable bass groove in the song Waiting Room. If you've never heard it, check it out. The bass groove is amazing. And there's just so much aggression on this album. Bulldog front, you have the two different vocalists, Ann and Guy, trading off. And they both have like a very distinct sound that complements each other so well. You have songs like Bad Mouth that have that chugging palm muting guitar with Ian's just classic punk rock vocal delivery over the top. And just another example, in the song Give Me the Cure, you have those trade-offs between Guy and Ian as well, where Guy's singing and then in the background Ian's singing, it breaks, it breaks, it breaks. It's tremendous. The guitar work is great. I used to, as a youngin', as a 14-year-old, 13-year-old, when I'm an entitled little kid and my dad would make me go out and mow the lawn or something, in my privileged annoyance, I would throw this on and just be pissed off mowing the lawn. but it's just a great, great album. Love it. This is Fugazi, 13 songs. And check out some of their other albums too. End Hits is one of my faves. And the Argument, perhaps maybe one of the greatest closing chapters of a band ever. I love The Argument. It's their final album. But obviously there's Repeater as well, which is a great album. So much worthwhile material to check out from Fugazi. And of course, Rites of Spring and Embrace as well, and Minor Threat. All the bands associated with Fugazi. Check those out. And next up we have The Wipers with Is This Real? Now this came out in 1980, and it's kind of considered like almost like a proto-grunge album. I think because they're from Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. But just that like dirty guitar tone. There's some heavier songs like Return of the Rat, Up Front, and D7 that have that really dirty guitar that you could see how that kind of would influence the grunge sound. But then there's poppier songs like Is This Real, Tragedy, Mystery, that you can really tell that Greg can write a fantastic pop song when he wants to. But with that, you have the punk rock attitude, and some really interesting guitar work. They kind of deviate between that power chord punk rock, but then he gets a little more jangly, a little more riffy. Just great stuff. I would encourage anyone to check this out. They have a little more experimental albums, but this is one of their more accessible, and it's a great album. And if you're trying to get into the Wipers, this is probably a good gateway, a good entry point. So check this one out. Next up, we have Algernon Cadwallader with Some Kind of Cadwallader. Now this was released in 2008. My copy here has seen better days. It is really cracked and beat up, but this went through college with me, so that makes sense. But this is a fantastic emo-ish album with a lot of like mathy guitar. There's a lot of like pull-offs and hammer-ons, very technical. You'll see the guitarist doing a lot of these on the neck of the guitar, but great stuff. If you're into bands like Captain Jazz, this has that aesthetic, and the vocalist has a distinct yell, and he yells and it's kind of drawn out and sustained. Like think of like a Tom York, but just yelling. And it's really cool though. And they're very tight as a band, and actually very uplifting sounding music at times. I saw them live, it must have been around 2009-ish at the University of Connecticut in just some, random, I don't know if it was a dorm building, it was just some building that they set up and played with a bunch of other bands. And honestly, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. I was just in pure bliss, and everyone was having so much fun, and we were just yelling along with the singer. It was just such a blast, and it's a memory that sticks out to me. So that's probably why I just also have such a fondness for this band. Just a great memory. So check this one out. It's punkish, but really technical, really cool guitar work. Check them out. Algernon Cadwallader. And then next up we have Dag Nasty, and this is Can I Say. This is off Discord, and it's a very melodic hardcore album. So if you're into like the chugging guitars and the thudding drums and the energy of hardcore music, you'll totally love this. But on the flip side, it does have a good pop sensibility to it. Some great guitar work, those surprisingly catchy hooks, but then you have those hardcore and punk rock elements of like the gang vocals. But you have that juxtaposed with, more background harmonies that might not be prevalent in a lot of other punk rock bands. Really cool stuff. Check out the song Values here, or Circles, just to get an idea of what this sounds like. But I'd imagine this is very instrumental to pop punk bands, and it's on a classic Discord punk rock label. You can't go wrong. Check this out. Last time I checked, it was on the Discord Bandcamp for free to listen to, so give it a goog. Now I want to talk about Nothing Feels Good by The Promise Ring. Classic album. It's emo, but has that pop punk sound, maybe even a little power pop. Just great stuff. The lead singer, Davey, writes some very catchy vocal melodies, very fun sing-alongable lyrics. And then that's backed by, heavy guitars, interesting bass work, not just like, following along with the guitar playing root notes, but a little more complex. And then some really cool drumming. The drumming is really great on this album. A lot of cool fills and just really nice drum work. But if you like a little more pop sensibility with your punk rock, this is where you should go. And obviously, they're a part of that emo scene as well. So there's that Midwest emo sound attached to this. But great album. Check it out. And here's another one similar to London Calling. I don't think I need to elaborate too much on. This is Husker Zen Arcade. Now, you're probably not going to hear anything new from me about this one. It is a classic. Husker great punk rock band. On this one, it's sort of a concept album of a boy that leaves a troubled home. And after they leave, they get into a lot of different things like joins the military, finds religion, finds love, there's drugs involved, and finds out that, the world is complicated and difficult even outside of their home. So really tremendous. There's songs on this like Something I Learned Today, Chartered Trips is amazing. We have Broken Home, Broken Heart, Never Talking to You Again. A lot of people will comment that this is a significant album when you talk about the beginning of alternative rock. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but the 80s was such a great time. And you had bands like Husker you had a lot of the bands I mentioned before, but then you had like bands like REM really shaping and changing where rock and roll was about to go. But just great album. The guitar tone, Husker Du's guitar tone, very trebly, very sharp, very in your face, very recognizable and distinct. So they have a lot of other great albums in the 80s. Bob Mould is a fantastic songwriter. Check this one out, and just always loved this cover. Always loved it. So Husker Zen Arcade, classic. Now, this is where I might get some detractors saying, this isn't punk rock, but this is Sleater-Kinney, the hot rock. And Sleater-Kinney, some of their earlier albums were definitely played more on that punk rock influence, but, their music is rooted in punk rock. And of course, there's the Riot Girl movement sound that came before them. Just a great album. This is my favorite Sleater-Kinney album, which, they have a ton of great albums like The Woods, One Beat, Dig Me Out. But something about this one always struck me and just always sat with me. And there's an energy there. There's Corin's very distinct vocal styling. And then that mashed up with Carrie's vocal delivery, which is a little more traditional punk rock sounding. But when they trade off vocals, there's just a magic there. They're a very dynamic duo. And I love the Carrie's guitar work on this one. A little more getting away from like chords and a little more like note picky riffs. I don't know how to describe it, but very interesting. She just has a very interesting style of playing guitar, and it's really prevalent on this one. And you got great songs like Start Together, great opener. You got Burn, Don't Freeze, God Is a Number. Get Up is one of my all-time favorite songs. I love Get Up. It's like anthemic for me. So check out Get Up. But then you have songs like The Size of Our Love, which are a little more stripped down, a little more laid back, a little more touching. And A Quarter To is another one that isn't as aggressive, but still tremendous songs. Really love this one. This is Sleater-Kinney, the hot rock. One of my favorite records of all time. Love this. Near and dear to my heart. And now I want to talk about Q and Not You, and this is No Kill, No Beep Beep. This is also on the classic Discord Records out of DC, and just phenomenal emo punk rock music. My favorite part of Q and Not You in this album is the guitar work and how the two guitarists play off each other. So cool. There's points where like the guitarist will use like screeching feedback sounds so effectively. The vocals are great. The bass work is great. Drums are great. Awesome album. Great songwriting. Check this one out. I love it. It's got that emo sound, but also, you know, just classic punk energy. Q and Not You. Great band, by the way. And lastly, we have Iceage. And this is You're Nothing. And this came out in 2013. Iceage is a really, really cool band. I love this one because it's very raw. If you're a fan of like 70s punk rock, maybe stuff like the Stooges, the guitar tone will jive with you. But then you have, you know, the energy of like 80s hardcore. And the vocal delivery is just so unique and cool. It sounds nihilistic, but passionate at the same time. And I don't know how that's achieved, because that seems like an oxymoron. But just great songwriting, songs like Ecstasy, Coalition, In Haze. There's an energy to this just that's like palpable. So frantic, can be noisy, a little dissonant, dark, but just great, great punk rock. And Iceage has gone on to make other albums since this one that are fantastic as well. But this is my all-time favorite. This one just has something to it that I love. Yeah, Iceage, You're Nothing. Check this one out. And that's it. Those are my favorite punk rock albums, punk rock-ish albums in my collection. Not necessarily my favorite punk rock albums of all time. I don't own some that I would love to, and as I'm building my collection, I hope to include those. But, you know, I love bands like X, the Buzzcocks, Minor Threat, Black Flag. I could go on and on. But just missing a lot of albums. And, you know, I didn't include, there's some bands I probably could have included in here, like Sonic Youth, that are rooted in punk rock, or like a Nirvana, or, you know, maybe a Pixies, but I didn't want to, you know, just detract too far from that punk rock sound. But yeah, thanks for watching. I've been a little light on content lately because I moved and things have been a little hectic. I did move from downstairs to upstairs, so it's not too bad, but still, you know, moving is a drag either way. So that might be why my background looks a little different. The walls are a different color here. It's virtually the same apartment with just slight differences. But yeah, thanks for watching. Like I said, I've gotten a lot of new subscribers lately. So please, if you're new, please consider subscribing, and also check me out on Instagram. That's @morningalbums. And my next video, I should be getting into some new discoveries that I found lately that aren't necessarily new releases. So these could be older albums from the 70s, 80s, whenever, but they're new to me. And I would love to kind of shout those out. So thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day and take care.